Hello, everybody. My name is Ethan Russell, and I will be discussing the Russian-Ukraine war, and I will be taking a closer look at America's involvement in supplying foreign aid during this war. And I will also be taking a look at the view of America on the world stage and how we are kind of leading the charge for supplying aid to Ukraine during this time. The Russian invasion of Ukraine took place on February 24th of 2022, being the largest military conflict in Europe since World War II. The United States has been a leading provider of foreign aid to Ukraine since the invasion, supplying billions of dollars in military, humanitarian, and financial assistance to the country. To begin with one of the most important aspects of supplying aid to Ukraine, we must begin at the military aid supplied to Ukraine. The U.S. has provided Ukraine with a wide range of military aid, including anti-tank and anti-aircraft weapons, artillery and rocket systems, armored vehicles and drones, small arms and ammo, intelligence and surveillance support, which amounts up to $55.5 billion of aid. This aid has helped Ukraine to defend itself against Russia's superior military forces and to launch successful counteroffensives against Russia. The United States has been the single most supplier of military aid to Ukraine since the invasion. Other major donors include the United Kingdom, Canada, and Germany. Military aid provided by the United States and other countries has helped Ukraine launch successful counteroffensives throughout the region of the country and has actually stopped Russia from advancing towards Kiev or any of the major other advances that they've tried. In addition to looking at military aid supplied to Ukraine, we also must look at humanitarian aid that the U.S. has supplied to Ukraine. The U.S. has provided over $2.6 billion in humanitarian aid to Ukraine since the invasion began, including food, water, shelter, medical supplies, and protection services for refugees and displaced persons. The U.S. is also supplying humanitarian aid to neighboring countries such as Poland, Moldova, and Romania, which have taken in millions of Ukrainian refugees. So as we can see, that the humanitarian aid and foreign aid supply does not only just go to Ukraine, it's also being outsourced to other countries, other neighboring countries around Ukraine. The U.S. government has worked with a variety of partners to deliver humanitarian assistance to Ukraine, and this also is including international organizations, non-government organizations, and the Ukrainian government as well. The humanitarian aid provided by the United States and other countries has helped to alleviate the suffering of millions of Ukrainians who have been affected by the war. However, the need for humanitarian assistance remains high. The war has caused a humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, with millions of people displaced from their homes and in need of food, water, shelter, and medical care. So it's a widespread issue, and other countries have been chipping in, but the U.S. has been leading the charge in humanitarian aid and supplying them to make sure that refugees and stuff have a place to go. Looking at the United States' financial aid commitment to Ukraine, we look at the over $13 billion in direct budget support to the Ukrainian government since the invasion began in February of 2022. This financial aid is intended to help the Ukrainian government keep its basic services running, such as healthcare, education, and social security. The U.S. government has also provided Ukraine with financial assistance through the International Monetary Fund, also known as the IMF, and the World Bank. The IMF has approved a $1.4 billion loan to Ukraine, and the World Bank has approved a $1.5 billion loan to Ukraine as well. The U.S. government has also worked with other countries to coordinate and amplify their financial assistance to Ukraine. For example, the U.S. and its allies have announced that they will provide Ukraine with $39 billion in financial assistance in 2023. The financial aid provided by the United States and other countries has helped the Ukrainian government to maintain its financial stability and to continue to provide basic services to its people. However, the need for financial assistance remains high. The war has had a devastating impact on the Ukrainian economy, and the government is struggling to meet the needs of its people. When adding up all of the different types of aid that the U.S. has supplied to Ukraine, we can see that the U.S. has been a leading provider of foreign aid to Ukraine since the invasion. The U.S. has committed more than $75 billion in assistance to Ukraine, which is more than any other country. And the U.S. has also worked to coordinate and amplify the foreign aid efforts to other countries. This is another aspect of why the U.S. has provided a strong leadership role on the world stage to other countries, because they look at us as kind of like a guiding factor to supplying Ukraine with foreign assistance. And the U.S. also has multiple different areas that they go to for different countries for arms, humanitarian aid, like Romania, Moldova. We've been supplying them with funds, and hopefully other countries can chip in as well and kind of share the cost of this war. And unfortunately, it could be a burden for many countries, but I mean, it's something that needs to happen. The U.S. is providing that leadership role and that guiding space for other countries to be able to pitch in and assist the Ukrainians during this crisis. When looking at U.S. leadership on the world stage, we turn to the Biden administration, who has faced challenges in maintaining U.S. leadership on the world stage during the Russia-Ukraine war. Some have criticized the administration for not doing more to prevent the war, while others have said that it has been too cautious in its response. Despite these challenges, the Biden administration has taken a number of steps to assert U.S. leadership on the world stage, including convening and leading the NATO alliance in a unified response to the war, imposing severe economic sanctions on Russia, providing billions of dollars in military, humanitarian, and financial aid to Ukraine, like I discussed in the previous slides, and working to rally other countries to support Ukraine and to isolate Russia. The Biden administration has also sought to reaffirm U.S. commitments to democracy and human rights around the world. In a speech to the United Nations General Assembly in September of 2022, President Biden said the United States is engaged in a new era of relentless diplomacy, mobilizing our allies and partners to meet the challenges and define the future. It remains whether to be seen the Biden administration will be able to maintain U.S. leadership on the world stage in the long term. However, its response to the Russia-Ukraine war has shown that the United States remains committed to its role as a global leader. On this slide, I will be discussing the domestic politics that occur and why the Ukraine-Russia war is becoming a partisan issue today in the United States. So there are several reasons why the United States is struggling when deciding to continue to send aid to Ukraine. First of this is cost. Providing aid to Ukraine is very expensive. The U.S. has already committed over $75 billion in assistance to Ukraine, and the war is likely to drag on for months or years. This is a significant financial burden for the United States, especially at a time when the country is facing high inflation and other economic challenges. There's also a risk of escalation. The U.S. does not want to get directly involved in the war in Ukraine for fear of escalating the conflict into a wider war with Russia. The U.S. is also concerned about the risk of nuclear war, as Russia has threatened to use nuclear weapons if it is defeated in Ukraine. Domestic opposition is also another factor that occurs. There is growing opposition to providing aid to Ukraine among some members of the U.S. Congress and the American public. Some people believe that the U.S. is already doing too much to help Ukraine and that it should focus on its own domestic issues instead. Others are concerned about the risk of getting drawn into a wider war with Russia. And I believe that part of these partisan issues occur is because we have some members of Congress who decide that military aid is something significant to Ukraine's future, and that is something that needs to be kept up with. But the just flat money rates going to Ukraine and supplying their government and their different businesses needs to stop. That cash flow needs to stop because that's just expedited expenditures that other European countries should take the reins of and afford. I mean, the U.S. has supplied military aid, and I believe that is the paramount issue here to go against Russian aggression. But I believe that Europe would need to step up and provide more financial aid to Ukraine to keep their government and stuff in working order. But despite these challenges, the Biden administration has said that it remains committed to supporting Ukraine, and the administration has argued that it is in the U.S.'s natural interest to help Ukraine defeat Russia, as it would send a strong message to other authoritarian regimes that they cannot invade their neighbors with impunity. In conclusion, the U.S. involvement in supplying foreign aid to Ukraine has been a major factor in the war effort. U.S. aid has helped Ukraine to defend itself against Russia and to launch successful counteroffensives. U.S. aid has also helped to alleviate the suffering of millions of Ukrainians who have been affected by the war, and the U.S. has been a leading provider of foreign aid to Ukraine and has worked to coordinate and amplify the foreign aid efforts of other countries. The Biden administration has faced challenges in maintaining U.S. leadership on the world stage during the Russia-Ukraine war. However, the administration is taking a number of steps to assert U.S. leadership, such as including convening the NATO alliance, imposing severe economic sanctions on Russia, providing billions of dollars in aid to Ukraine, and working to rally other countries in support of Ukraine, while also isolating Russia. In summary, the decision of whether to continue to send aid to Ukraine is a difficult one for the U.S. government to make. There are several factors to consider, including the cost, the risk of escalation, and domestic opposition. However, the Biden administration reinstates that it remains committed to supporting Ukraine, and it is likely that the U.S. will continue to provide aid to Ukraine in the months and years to come. This is the leading factor as to why the U.S. is the world stage leader on this topic. We have provided relentless support to Ukraine, and I do not see that changing at all in the future. I mean, that's got to be something that we are committed to already, and we are going to fulfill that. And maybe that means by getting other countries to step up and provide more. But if the U.S. is that leadership role, that should also influence other countries to assist us as well. Other countries like that are allies with us.